Most human suffering comes from one stubborn idea: me. Our subconscious treats this me like the center of the universe, the protagonist of every story, the one thing that absolutely must survive and thrive above all else. Biology supports this understanding with survival mechanisms that evolution has refined over millions of years. These neural circuits were designed to keep human bodies safe, maintain social status, and resist anything that feels like change or threat. However, spiritual traditions across cultures have always pointed to something that challenges this entire biological setup. Each life connects to every other life in ways that humans can barely comprehend. And consciousness isn't actually divided the way thoughts insist it must be. People aren't separate islands of awareness floating in an indifferent universe. They function more like waves in an ocean that believe they exist independently from the water itself. Some seekers use pretty unusual methods to experience this directly. To an outsider, these methods can look absolutely shocking, even disturbing. But they're actually tools designed to quiet the self-importance that keeps our minds trapped in cycles of pain, craving, and fear. Before we go anywhere with this, let me be completely clear about something that cannot be emphasized enough. These are historical, culture-bound practices that emerged from specific lineages over centuries of careful development. They're definitely not for beginners. They're not challenges for us to try at home. Many require years of foundational practice, guidance from qualified teachers, community support, and sometimes even formal initiation. Some can trigger serious psychological episodes in unprepared individuals. Others can cause physical harm if approached carelessly. Please don't attempt anything extreme we discuss here. The point of this exploration is understanding the logic behind these practices, not giving us a how-to manual. Why do people choose methods that look so extreme? Because most of us are slaves to our old habits and biology. Safe routines and constant distraction can keep awareness pretty shallow for decades. Our minds get very good at maintaining narrow comfort zones where we never have to face our deepest fears or question our most fundamental assumptions. The techniques we're about to see force the mind to confront what it usually avoids at all costs: death, fear, shame, emptiness, the passage of time, and the raw, unfiltered movement of life itself. A group of students sit at the edge of an ancient Indian village. Their teacher leads them where bodies decompose in the open. There are no coffins here, and no attempt to hide what death actually looks like. It is exactly what it is. They watch for hours and sometimes entire days. Vultures tear flesh from bone. The stages of decay unfold in brutal detail. This becomes their classroom. Back at their meditation spots, they practice the same sequence in their minds. They visualize a fresh corpse that has become swollen and discolored, then gets torn by birds and dogs, reduced to scattered bones, bleached white by sun, crumbling to dust, and finally becoming nothing. This is Aśubha bhāvanā, contemplation of what's unattractive. This practice sounds grim, but it's an antidote for humanity's deepest delusion. It breaks the spell that says, this body is who I am, and this body will satisfy every desire if I perfect it enough. The Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, all conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence. This practice makes impermanence undeniable. As practitioners absorb this training, their desperate clinging to appearance loosens. Fear of aging becomes less sharp. Sexual obsession calms naturally as they are able to see the temporary nature of what they chase. As these teachings deepen in these students, they see that everyone they meet shares the same fate. Beautiful, successful, confident people all face identical decomposition. Many students report benefits beyond expectation. Their minds become steadier because they stop defending against impermanence. Compulsive pleasure seeking decreases. They develop protective feelings towards all living beings, like watching children play in a yard. They know the children don't understand what they're doing. The Maransati practice from the Vishuddhimagga states, "Death will come to this body which is so dear and pleasant to me." This recognition transforms how students relate to physical existence. These practices carry significant dangers that cannot be ignored. It can trigger intense disgust, panic attacks, or morbid fixation if students push too fast. Depression can deepen if someone uses this to validate negative self-image. Traditional teachers chose students carefully. They assessed psychological stability and paced exposure with great care. In 2006, I visited a Zen monastery in Kyoto, Japan, and witnessed something that looked almost surreal. A line of people moved down a corridor so slowly they appeared to be statues in motion, as if time itself had been stretched. This is Kinhin, and it's one of those practices that seems simple until you try it. Each practitioner places their heel against the ground with presence. The toe follows like it's being positioned by a master craftsman. The breath sets the rhythm, usually one complete step per full inhale and exhale. The hands rest in a simple mudra, often with the right fist enclosed by the left hand, held against the chest. Each face remains calm, like a mask. The eyes look down about 6 feet ahead and soften their focus. Nothing dramatic happens, which is exactly the point. Why do this when practitioners could just sit in meditation? Because human minds are incredibly skilled at compartmentalizing life into separate categories. Stillness is for meditation. Movement is for getting somewhere. Work is different from practice. Sacred is separate from mundane. Kinhin demolishes these artificial divisions completely. The Zen master Dogen taught, "You should understand that Zazen is not learning meditation. It is the Dharma gate of great ease." This same understanding applies to walking meditation, where the practice becomes the realization itself. When practitioners walk this slowly with this much attention, presence follows them into motion. Their habitual ways of moving through the world lose their automatic grip. Each step becomes a complete universe unto itself, rather than just a means to reach some destination. For many people, the first real taste of genuine silence actually arrives more easily in walking than in sitting meditation. As one progresses in this practice, they train attention to be independent of content. Usually, awareness gets hijacked by whatever's happening, like thoughts, sensations, emotions, plans, memories. In Kinhin, there's so little happening that awareness starts to notice itself. Practitioners begin to taste the space in which all experience arises and passes away. As the Heart Sutra teaches, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Walking meditation reveals how movement and stillness are not separate phenomena, but expressions of the same underlying awareness. It is safe to say that no other school of spiritual thought can cultivate energy as well as Daoists can. Their manuals contain descriptions that sound like something from a fantasy novel. Adepts sleep on cold stone floors, their bodies curled into specific feline postures, breath held in precisely measured patterns. Their goal involves gathering and transforming what they call Jing, sexual essence, into Qi, vital energy, and then into Shen, spiritual consciousness. The names and specifics vary across different schools. Some call it sleeping tiger, others refer to dragon hibernation or turtle breathing, but the image remains consistent throughout these traditions. A human body consciously takes on the shape and energetic quality of a powerful animal at rest. drawing strength and stillness from the earth itself. This might look like voluntary discomfort, maybe even masochistic self-denial, but it is actually a sophisticated lesson in energy conservation and internal cultivation. Think about how a cat can sleep for hours in what looks like an uncomfortable position, then wake up perfectly refreshed and immediately alert. That quality of deep rest combined with coiled potential drives what these practices attempt to cultivate. The Tao Te Ching teaches the sage does not attempt anything very big and thus achieves greatness. This principle applies to these subtle energy practices where small adjustments create profound internal changes. The theory suggests that warm beds, soft pillows, and constant comfort actually scatter life force in subtle ways. Energy leaks out through seeking pleasure, avoiding discomfort, and maintaining the habitual patterns that keep practitioners feeling separate from the natural world. Cold stone, empty rooms, and consciously regulated breathing signal the nervous system to pool resources and turn attention inward. The pose itself imitates nature to learn from it. A tiger at rest isn't unconscious like a human. He is gathered, present, conserving energy while remaining perfectly capable of explosive action. The cold stone tells the body exactly where it exists in space and prevents the scattered dreaming that comes with too much comfort. Zhuangzi wrote, "The perfect man uses his mind like a mirror. It grasps nothing, it refuses nothing, it receives but does not keep." These physical practices aim to create the same quality of clear receptivity in the body. Practitioners who do this seriously can notice profound changes. They are able to experience unusually vivid and lucid dreams, rapid recovery of physical strength after exertion, and a quality of grounded clarity that persists throughout their daily activities. Some describe feeling more connected to natural rhythms, sleeping and waking with the light cycles, eating when truly hungry rather than from habit or emotion. Advanced practitioners in certain Daoist and Bon traditions undertake retreats in complete darkness that can last days, weeks, or even months. Students step into rooms where absolutely no light exists. Complete, total darkness surrounds them. They don't have any access to phones or anything that produces light. Simple food gets passed through light-sealed slots during these extended periods. This differs from sensory deprivation as modern science understands it, because sound, touch, taste, and smell remain fully available. The practice specifically removes visual input, which processes something like 80% of the information the brain normally handles. Without this constant stream of visual data, the entire nervous system reorganizes itself. Within the first day or two, circadian rhythms begin to shift in ways that feel almost alien to participants. Dreams become incredibly thick and vivid, often more memorable than waking experiences. Internal imagery starts rising through geometric patterns, landscapes, faces, scenes that feel more real than anything experienced with eyes open. Some practitioners talk about encounters with what feels like other beings or intelligences. Traditional scriptures talk about the arising of inner light and various forms of spiritual nectar, and neuroscience notes dramatic changes in hormone production, particularly around melatonin, DMT, and other neurochemicals that are normally suppressed by light exposure. Whether you call it spiritual awakening or neurochemical reorganization, something otherworldly happens when consciousness gets freed from its usual visual constraints. Often at the beginning, fear is experienced, primal and wordless terror at being cut off from the visual world that feels so essential to survival. This can last hours or days. Then, for most people, a great calm settles in, deeper than anything accessible in normal waking consciousness. The mind stops its constant categorizing and labeling and starts to rest in pure awareness. The Tibetan Book of the Dead states, "The void you fear is the light you seek." This understanding becomes visceral during extended darkness practice. The benefits, when this practice happens in proper containers with adequate preparation and integration support, can be genuinely life-changing. There's often a complete reset of the nervous system that can break chronic patterns of anxiety or depression. People report a renewed capacity for silence that persists long after returning to normal light. However, the dangers cannot be overstated. Some individuals experience what's called dark night of the soul phenomena, profound spiritual crises that can last months or years if not properly integrated. These retreats absolutely belong in careful settings that screen participants thoroughly, provide ongoing support during the retreat, and offer substantial integration work afterward. This should never be attempted alone in basements because of curiosity about consciousness. At the absolute edge of what most people can even conceptually handle, sadhakas encounter images and practices that can unsettle even seasoned spiritual seekers. In certain streams of Indian Tantra, particularly among the Aghoris and historical Kapalikas, a human skull becomes a ritual object of the most intimate kind. A bowl for food and drink, a mirror for self-reflection, a teacher that cannot lie or flatter. The practice begins by the practitioner going into deep meditative states, often by chanting specific mantras, sometimes laughing in a way that's completely different from social laughter. It's the sound of shame cracking open, of fear being met so directly that it transforms into something else entirely. The skull gets held and contemplated as an object that strips away every pretense, every attempt to look good or maintain a spiritual image. It returns the face without skin, without the mask of personality, without any of the stories that people tell themselves about who they are. Why would anyone choose to do something so disturbing? Because the human ego lives almost entirely on avoidance. It maintains a private museum of experiences, feelings, and realizations it simply will not encounter. The reality of death, physical disgust, secret pride, the wish to appear pure and elevated in the eyes of others. The ego's survival strategy involves keeping these shadow elements locked away where they can't challenge its carefully constructed self-image. The Aghori tradition teaches that Shiva exists in all things, including what society considers impure or horrifying. As one ancient text states, where others see pollution, the awakened see the divine playing in all forms. A ritual that deliberately brings these shadows into direct view can potentially end the exhausting war with them. When fear of death gets met without flinching, real compassion has room to breathe. Not the sentimental kind that needs to feel good about itself, but the fierce tenderness that can sit with anyone's pain without trying to fix or change it. When the shame gets seen through completely, kindness can arise without needing to perform or prove anything. This practice gives sadhakas a profound freedom to sit with whatever is raw and difficult, to serve others without concern for how it affects their image or reputation, and to recognize the sacred in places where conventional culture sees only horror or filth. There's often a quality of fearlessness that develops, a capacity to feel fear fully without being controlled by it. The cautions here cannot be stated strongly enough. This field of practice is absolutely notorious for distortions, spiritual materialism, and people who can imitate the outer forms without doing any of the inner psychological work that makes them safe or meaningful. Much of what gets called Aghori online is pure performance art, spiritual bypassing, or actually psychological pathology. The shadow material that these practices are designed to integrate can easily overwhelm someone who isn't properly prepared. There are documented cases of practitioners developing serious mental health issues, becoming dangerously dissociated from normal human feeling, or using the practices to justify genuinely harmful behavior toward themselves or others. If someone feels genuinely drawn to the essential truth behind these extreme forms, the safest approach involves working with the psychological principles rather than the ritual objects. Bring one honest fear into the light with a qualified therapist or spiritual teacher who understands shadow work. Name it clearly without defending against it or trying to make it sound reasonable. Feel it fully in the body until it begins to soften and transform. Let any laughter that arises be simple relief rather than spiritual achievement. The skull, symbolically speaking, represents the part that's already died, the false self, the ego's endless projects, the need to be special or different. An actual skull isn't needed to contemplate what remains when all those layers get stripped away. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches, for the soul there is neither birth nor death. It is not slain when the body is slain. Each of these practices targets a specific way that the ego maintains its sense of separation and specialness. It systematically empties something that usually inflates the me. What remains after this emptying is spacious in a way that's difficult to describe. It's capable of love that doesn't need to bargain or make deals. It can meet life as it actually is, rather than as the ego wishes it would be. People choose these extreme methods because sometimes ordinary approaches simply cannot reach the root of deep conditioning. A life of mild comfort, spiritual entertainment, and gradual improvement can keep trauma frozen and unconscious patterns churning for literally decades. This is why authentic lineages developed and carefully guarded these practices. They understood that the doors they open are real, and they also knew that the cliffs around those doors are equally real.